Welcome to Montana Matters. We're joined by Malcolm Horn. She is the Director of Special Services for Rimrock. We want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, Rimrock helps people with their addictions, and we're talking today about cannabis. Is cannabis stronger now than it used to be?
Yes, it's much stronger, and I think that sometimes confuses people. They think, oh, my parents smoked pot, or sometimes even parents might say, oh, I smoked pot when I was a kid. But the pot of today is very different than the pot of 20 years ago. THC, which is the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, the percentage, the concentration of 20 years ago was 4%, 5%. Nowadays, especially the stuff that's coming up from Colorado, it's more in the 20%. It's getting up there. And then when you talk about some of the dabs and the tinctures, the oils, then you're talking about 80 to 90% THC. So it's much stronger than it used to be. And when you talk about the edibles, which a lot of the kiddos like to do, then you really don't know what the concentration is. So there's no way to know how much THC are they getting. And that's why we're starting to see some of the really negative effects of using cannabis. Okay, so that's a huge difference in the percentages of THC from back then compared to today. Yeah. You mentioned the edibles. Are those safe? Are they safe? Well, yes and no. It depends on your definition of safe. So the edibles are when they use cannabis in the butter or the oil to make something. So brownies, people talk about pot brownies. You don't always know the concentration of the THC in there. And so for some people, it might cause them to have a great deal of difficulties. They're very high, for lack of a better term to use. And I've also seen people who, they might eat the brownie or the cookie or the whatever, and because it's going through your digestive tract, it takes a little while for your body to start to feel the effect. And so people might eat more and more thinking, well, I'm not high yet, and then suddenly they're flooded with the THC. They've got almost too much in their system.
Right, so that could cause some issues.
Yes,
I can tell.
Could.
Okay, so what is the true medicinal purposes of marijuana?
So that's the big question. People talk about medical marijuana versus recreational marijuana. There is scientific evidence that there are some things that cannabis has a great medical effect for, and that's fabulous. I have a friend who has cancer, and he uses pot after his chemotherapy sessions. So there is some medicinal purpose. We don't know a lot about the long-term effects of what that might be. We also don't know enough about some of the things that people want to use medicinal pot for that are probably not effective. Anxiety is a great one. People say, well, it's the only thing that treats my anxiety. And I say, well, you're stoned. That's why you're not anxious. It's just like, well, have a beer, you won't be anxious. It doesn't necessarily treat the disorder. So looking at, the recreational versus medicinal properties, we need to do a lot more research, and I'm really glad that we're starting to see a lot more of that coming out of some of the, like NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, is really looking at some of the medicinal purposes. You think about a lot of the substances out there, and in some ways they had a medicinal purpose. Alcohol used to be, we used it to disinfect wounds. We used it to, if you had surgery, we used it. So there was a medicinal purpose. So we're exploring that, and there's still a lot of scientific things to be explored with pot. Okay,
so a difference between medicinal and recreational.
Yes.
Also, there can be addictions to this as well, and that is what Rimrock specializes in. So Malcolm, we want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for supporting local business.
Thank you.